We and my friends always loved seeking thrills. One autumn, when the evenings grew long and fog crept over the streets, someone in the group suggested an idea to go to the abandoned hospital on the outskirts of the city. Everyone knew that place. It had stood empty for about 20 years. It used to be a psychiatric ward, but after several scandals and a fire, the building was shut down. Locals avoided it. Some said it was dangerous because of collapsing structures. Others whispered about patients who had once disappeared without a trace. The hospital was huge, 3 stories tall, with shattered windows and rusted metal doors. Around it was a wild, overgrown garden with a narrow path barely cutting through the weeds. Even in daylight, there was a disturbing silence. No bird song, no noise of cars from the road. We arrived in the evening when dusk had already settled. I felt uneasy even on the way there. The wind rocked the bare branches of the trees and they creaked like someone groaning. When we finally reached the entrance, one of my friends joked, "Well, shall we go in? Maybe we should sign a will first?" Inside, we were met by cold, real, damp cold that crawled into your bones, even though it wasn't that chilly outside. Glass crunched underfoot, and the air smelled of rot and medicine. A heavy, sickly sweet odor of old morphine that couldn't be mistaken for anything else. We shone our flashlights around. The endless corridors with peeling paint stretched into the darkness. Some doors still bore signs: surgery, therapy, ward number. On icky in places, broken wheelless gurneys and rusted nightstands were scattered about. In some rooms, iron beds still stood, corroded with sunken wire frames. Even though we were together, I felt anxiety tightening in my chest, especially when we went down into the basement. Down there it was darker, the air thick and stifling. The walls were covered with mold, the pipes rusted. Somewhere in the distance, water dripped, and every sound echoed. One of my friends, Serhi, groped for a door and opened it. The flashlight beam revealed a small room like a storage closet. Inside were piles of old documents, yellowed patient records scattered across the floor. We started flipping through them out of curiosity. That's when I noticed. On some pages there were lists of patients, but the last lines in each logbook had been crossed out, and instead of diagnoses someone had written only dates in black marker. No explanations. The last entries were made after the hospital had been officially closed. I glanced at my friends. They had noticed it too. Everyone fell silent, and at that very moment, a door slammed loudly in the corridor behind us. We jumped. Someone laughed nervously, saying it was just a draft. Old hinges. But none of us could force ourselves to leave the room right away. There was a feeling that we were not alone in that building. We stood in that cramped room, staring at each other and at the door that had just slammed shut. Nobody wanted to admit they were scared, but in everyone's eyes the same thought was clear. We have no idea what is happening right now. Serhi, trying to break the tension, was the first to step into the corridor. His flashlight shook in his hand. "There's nothing here," he said, though his voice cracked in betrayal. We moved on. In the basement, there were several more doors. 2 were boarded shut, and the third stood wide open. Inside was a large windowless room, looking more like a storage space, or maybe some technical area. On the floor lay broken tiles, pieces of furniture, and old iron chains rusted into the concrete. I bent down closer and noticed, on the concrete were dark stains, looking like old dried streaks. A chill ran down my spine. "Is that blood?" Olya whispered. No one answered. We all pretended it was rust or paint, but every single one of us thought the same thing. Further down, we found a door leading into an even deeper corridor. The air there felt heavier, and the sounds more muffled. Our flashlights flickered now and then, making our hearts pound even harder. At the end of the corridor stood massive metal doors with a small barred window. At first, we thought it was some kind of boiler room or storage, but when Serhi shone his light through the grate, we saw that behind the doors was a room filled with rows of beds, placed tightly next to each other, and each bed was bolted to the floor. We stared in silence. It was obvious. This was no storage. It looked like a ward, but not one meant for treatment, for something else entirely. I pushed at the door, but it wouldn't budge. The lock, though old, still held, and right at that moment another sound came. At first faint, a click, as if someone brushed against the metal. Then a long, dragging creak, like something heavy being pulled along the corridor. We instantly turned off our flashlights. My heart was pounding so loudly it felt like it would echo through the entire basement. The noises drew closer, slow, methodical, the scraping of metal across the floor. Someone couldn't take it and whispered, "Let's get out." Now we dropped the documents we were holding and began backing toward the exit. Only when we made it up to the first floor did we all exhale at once. And it would have ended there, if not for one detail. Already outside, when we'd walked some distance from the hospital and stopped to catch our breath, Sirhi pulled a logbook from his pocket. He had grabbed it in our rush to escape. We flipped through its pages under the beam of a flashlight. On the very last page it said, "Patients have been transferred to the basement wards. Experiments continue." And the date, 1998. But the hospital had been officially closed in 1996. After that night, we all went our separate ways in silence. No one joked, no one laughed. The same thought spun in each of our heads. What had we just seen? And what did that journal mean? But by the next day, curiosity had beaten fear. Sirhi had texted in the group chat, "Who's coming with me during the day? We need to take another look." We hesitated, but in the end, 3 of us went. Me, Sirhi, and Olya. The rest refused. They said they wouldn't set foot there again for any money. We arrived in the daylight when the sun was shining straight through the broken windows. The hospital didn't look as threatening anymore, but the heavy feeling still lingered. We went down to the basement. That's when the first surprise awaited us. The journal we had flipped through last night was gone. We swore to each other that we had left it on the desk by the entrance, but now only empty folders and coverless sheets lay there. In the corridor where we had heard that sound, everything looked the same. Rusty pipes, a damp floor, metal doors. But when Siri shone his flashlight through the bars, there were no beds inside anymore. An empty room, bare floor, dirt and dust. We stood in silence. Olya spoke first. "You saw them too, right? I'm not losing my mind?" We had seen them. The beds, the bolts in the concrete, the stains on the floor, and now, nothing. We left the hospital faster than we had entered. Outside, almost at the road, an older man, maybe 60, stopped us. He was sitting on a bench near an old house across the street. He looked at us carefully and suddenly asked, "You kids were in the hospital?" We nodded. He sighed, lit a cigarette, and said quietly, "I've lived here all my life. I saw when they shut it down. You'd better not go back there." We exchanged glances and, for the first time, decided to listen to a stranger. But he went on. "In the 90s, they started bringing people there unofficially. The homeless, drunks, sometimes even those who just got in someone's way. Officially, the hospital was closed, but they used the basement as locked wards. They did experiments there, tested drugs. Some people never walked out." We froze. Olya went pale. "You say it's all been cleared out?" The old man exhaled smoke. "That's right. They've cleaned it several times already, so nothing would be left. But those who disappeared back then, no one ever found them." We thanked him quietly and left. And from that day on, none of us ever went back to that hospital. But every night, when I fall asleep, I remember that sound in the basement, the scrape of metal dragging across the floor, slowly coming closer to us. And I realize we managed to leave just in time.